Jungkook begs Jimin not to leave, but Jimin's final answer shatters everything he thought he knew. The fluorescent lights trembled overhead when Jungkook slammed his palm against the studio door, breath fractured, eyes burning. "Jimin, please, don't walk out," he gasped, voice trembling in a way he never allowed anyone to hear. Jimin froze mid-step, back facing him, shoulders rigid as if his entire body was fighting the instinct to turn around. The rain outside hammered against the windows, a frantic rhythm that matched Jungkook's heartbeat. The air smelled like sweat and cold metal, the remnants of rehearsal tension still clinging to the walls. Jimin stood silent, fingers curled tightly around the strap of his duffel bag, knuckles white. "Don't make me say it again," Jimin whispered. His voice cracked like thin glass. Jungkook took a slow, desperate step toward him. He felt the ache in his chest travel up his throat, choking him. He had seen Jimin angry, tired, even numb, but never like this. There was a tremor beneath the calm, a storm caged inside his bones. "What happened tonight wasn't what you think," Jungkook insisted, swallowing hard. "Let me explain. Please." Jimin finally turned around. His eyes were red not from crying, but from holding everything in. And that was worse. Jimin's emotions had always been loud and warm. Silence meant something had broken. "You want to explain?" Jimin said softly, a bitter half-laugh escaping him. "Explain why you froze when I needed you? Why you looked away from me like I was a burden?" Jungkook inhaled sharply. The memory hit him in fragments. The argument during rehearsal, the misstep, Jimin's hand reaching for him, his own hesitation. He hadn't meant to pull away, his mind had been clouded, heavy with unspoken fears, but the damage was already done. "Jimin, I swear, I didn't mean," "But you did hesitate." Jimin stepped closer, the scent of rain and sweat clinging to his clothes. "I saw it. I felt it. That moment told me more than any words ever could." Jungkook's throat tightened. He tried to speak, but the guilt welded his tongue to the roof of his mouth. A single heartbeat passed. Then another. And in that silence, Jimin looked at him the way people look at memories they're trying not to mourn. "I'm not leaving because of tonight alone," Jimin continued. "This has been building for months. You know it." Jungkook winced because yes, he knew. The unsaid things. The tension they pretended wasn't there. The fear that if they confronted it, everything would crumble. "I thought I could wait for you," Jimin whispered. "Wait for you to be honest, with me and with yourself. But you kept running from the truth. And I'm tired, Jungkook. I'm so tired." Jungkook's hands trembled. "I wasn't running from you. I was running from myself. That's different." "Not to me." The rain outside thickened, sliding down the windows like tears. Jungkook stepped forward, gently taking Jimin's wrist. Jimin didn't pull away, but he didn't lean in either. "Tell me what you want," Jungkook pleaded. "Tell me what I need to fix. I'll do anything, Jimin. Anything." Jimin blinked slowly, as if each movement cost him something. "What I wanted," his voice faltered. "What I wanted was for you to want me without fear. Without doubt. Without needing me to beg for the truth." Jungkook felt the words strike deep. He opened his mouth, heart pounding, ready, finally ready, to confess everything he'd buried. The nights he stayed awake thinking of Jimin's laugh. The way his chest tightened every time Jimin looked at him. The fear of wanting too much and losing everything. "Jimin," he whispered, "I do want you. I've always," but Jimin shook his head gently, stepping back until Jungkook's hand slipped from his wrist like a final thread unraveling. "Don't say it now," Jimin murmured. "Not after all this time. Not when it took losing me for you to finally speak." Jungkook's breath shattered. "So that's it. You're giving up." "I'm not giving up," Jimin said. "I'm choosing myself. For once." His voice was soft but firm. A decision carved in quiet agony. "Jimin, please," Jungkook whispered, voice breaking so hard it hurt. "Don't leave. Don't do this. Not like this." Jimin looked at him one last time, eyes full of love, pain, longing, and resignation all tangled together. "I can't stay where I'm constantly hurting," he said. "And I can't keep waiting for you to love me out loud." The world seemed to stop. Even the rain outside felt muted. Jungkook stepped forward instinctively, but Jimin lifted a hand, not harshly, but with heartbreaking gentleness stopping him in place. "This is my final answer," Jimin whispered. And it destroyed him. Jungkook's knees nearly gave out as Jimin turned, opened the door, and walked into the rain without looking back. The cold air that swept in felt like a wound. Jungkook remained frozen, breath trembling, the sound of Jimin's footsteps fading into nothing but the echo of everything unspoken. He sank to the floor slowly, palms pressing against the cold studio tiles, tears finally spilling in hot, silent waves. For the first time, the strongest member felt unbearably small, and Jimin's absence felt louder than any scream. But even in the hollow silence that followed, something stirred, a realization, a truth he could no longer deny, a love too big to stay buried. It was too late to say it, but impossible to forget. And in the echo of that loss, their story, fragile, painful, and still alive, continued to breathe. The rain had turned into a violent storm by the time Jungkook stumbled out of the studio, the cold air biting into his skin as if punishing him for every word he failed to say. He didn't even put on a jacket. He just ran blindly, breathlessly, until the world blurred into streaks of city lights and water. Jimin's last words kept replaying in his head like a cruel refrain. "I can't keep waiting for you to love me out loud." The phrase hollowed him out from the inside, leaving only shards. When he finally slowed down, he found himself at the edge of the Han River, chest heaving, clothes drenched, hair plastered to his forehead. The city sparkled across the water, indifferent to his suffering. Jungkook pressed a hand over his face and let out a shaky breath that felt more like a sob. "Jimin," he whispered into the storm, as if the river might carry his voice to him. Behind him, hurried footsteps splashed through puddles. Someone grabbed his shoulder with a familiar firmness. "Are you out of your mind? You'll get sick." Taehyung's voice was sharp, almost angry, but his eyes were filled with worry. Jungkook didn't turn around. "I don't care." Taehyung exhaled, long and frustrated. "I know he left. I saw him storm out with that look." "What happened this time?" Jungkook's jaw tightened. "I didn't say what I should have said. And now he won't listen." Taehyung moved to stand beside him, arms crossed against the rain. "You mean you froze again?" Jungkook flinched. "I didn't do it on purpose." "But you did it." Taehyung's voice softened only slightly. "And Jimin, he's been breaking quietly for months. I warned you." Jungkook pressed his palms to his eyes, pushing back another wave of helplessness. I know. I messed up. I'm not asking you to defend me." "Good," Taehyung said bluntly. "Because I'm not going to." Jungkook's shoulders sagged. The rain soaked deeper, chilling him to the bone, but nothing felt as cold as the realization that he might have truly lost Jimin. "He said he's choosing himself," Jungkook said quietly. "That it's too late." Taehyung let the silence stretch for a long moment before answering. "Do you believe him?" Jungkook swallowed hard. He sounded like he meant it. "But do you believe he can really walk away from you?" Taehyung asked, voice gentler now. "Completely walk away?" Jungkook closed his eyes and the truth, sharp and painful, rose to the surface. "No," Jungkook whispered. "Because I know how he looks at me. And I know how I look at him." Taehyung nodded. "Then the real question is, are you going to keep running from the truth? Or are you going to fight for him before someone else does?" Jungkook's eyes snapped open. A new fear surged through him. "Someone else?" Taehyung hesitated, lips pressing together. "Maybe I shouldn't say it," Jungkook demanded. Taehyung muttered a curse under his breath. "Earlier today, before rehearsal, I saw Jimin talking to a guy from the choreography team. He looked comfortable with him. And that guy wasn't afraid to be bold with him." The storm roared louder in Jungkook's ears. A hot, possessive anger rippled through him, one he had spent months suppressing, pretending wasn't there. "Who?" Jungkook asked, voice dangerously low. Taehyung sighed. "Minwo." Jungkook's hands curled into fists. He remembered Minwo's lingering stares, the way he always found excuses to talk to Jimin, the subtle flirting Jungkook had convinced himself didn't mean anything. But Jimin walking away tonight, maybe Minwo suddenly meant everything. Taehyung watched Jungkook's expression shift from despair to rage to something more frightening. "Resolve, Jungkook," Taehyung warned, "don't do anything stupid." "I'm done being scared," Jungkook murmured. "I'm done pretending I don't know what I want." He turned abruptly, rain slashing across his face like cold fire. Where did Jimin go? Taehyung sighed again. Home, I think. He looked exhausted. Jungkook nodded once, a decision locking into place, but as they began walking back, Taehyung spoke up again, almost reluctantly, you should know something else. When I passed him, he wasn't crying. Jungkook's steps faltered, he looked angry. That single word struck him like lightning. Jimin wasn't just hurt, he was furious. It meant he still cared. And that tiny spark lit something inside Jungkook that had been dead for months. By the time they reached the dorm building, Jungkook broke into a run, taking the stairs two at a time, ignoring Taehyung's shouts behind him. His heart slammed against his ribs as he reached Jimin's door. He didn't knock softly. He pounded, voice raw, Jimin, open the door. Silence. Jungkook's breath trembled. He pressed his forehead against the wood. I'm not leaving, he said, louder now. I'm not walking away this time. You can ignore me, scream at me, hate me, but I'm not going anywhere. The doorknob clicked. Jungkook's breath caught. The door opened just a crack, revealing Jimin's pale face, his eyes shadowed with the kind of hurt that cut deeper than anything physical. What do you want, Jungkook? Jimin asked, voice tired, guarded, trembling beneath the surface. Jungkook met his gaze, something fierce and vulnerable burning in his own eyes. You, he said. Only you. Jimin's fingers tightened on the edge of the door, his breath hitched, just slightly, and the storm between them finally began to shift. The door opened wider, slowly, as if Jimin was giving Jungkook just enough space to step inside, but not close enough to touch him. The faint light from Jimin's room spilled into the dim hallway, warm yet distant, and Jungkook felt something twist painfully inside his chest. Jimin stepped back without saying a word, walking toward his desk and placing his phone down with deliberate calm. His hair was still damp from the rain, his clothes clinging to his body, his breathing uneven. He didn't look at Jungkook, not even when the door clicked shut behind them. Jungkook's heart pounded at the weight of the silence. Jimin, he started carefully, afraid that one wrong word would shatter whatever fragile thread still connected them. Don't. Jimin raised a hand, still not facing him. Don't start with an apology you don't even understand. Jungkook flinched. I'm not here to apologize. That made Jimin still. He turned slowly, eyes narrowed. Then what are you here for? Jungkook stepped closer. To tell you the truth. Jimin let out a low, humorless laugh. The truth. Now. After months of running? After making me feel like I was begging for something that should have been freely given? Jungkook didn't retreat. Not this time, you're right, he said quietly. I was running. Because wanting you scared the hell out of me. Jimin's jaw tightened. That's not my fault. I never said it was. Jimin's eyes flickered, hurt flashing beneath the anger, and Jungkook took a slow breath, moving closer until only a few steps separated them. I didn't freeze because I didn't want you, Jungkook said, voice trembling despite the resolve in his chest. I froze because I wanted you too much. Because every time I looked at you, it felt like I was standing on the edge of something huge, something I couldn't control. Jimin shook his head, but his voice was softer. Don't romanticize fear. I'm not. Jungkook's voice cracked. I'm telling you I was a coward. And I hated myself for it. Jimin swallowed hard. His anger wavered, replaced by a flicker of vulnerability he tried desperately to hide. Why now? Jimin whispered. Why only after I walked away? Because watching you leave felt like someone ripped out the only thing keeping me breathing. The words hung in the air, raw and trembling. Jimin looked away, blinking rapidly as if the words hit too close. You think saying that fixes anything? No, Jungkook answered immediately. It doesn't. It won't. But I'm not leaving until you hear everything. Jimin's lips parted, but before he could respond, Jungkook stepped closer, close enough that their breaths mingled, close enough that Jimin instinctively stepped back until his hips brushed the edge of the desk. Jungkook didn't touch him. He didn't dare. I saw Minwo flirting with you today, Jungkook said, voice low and shaking with something dangerous and unfiltered. And for the first time, I realized I was about to lose you to someone who wasn't afraid to show you what I kept hiding. Jimin's gaze sharpened. So now you're jealous? Jimin muttered. Now you care because someone else sees my worth. Jungkook clenched his fists. I've always cared. Jealousy just reminded me how badly. Jimin scoffed and began to turn away, but Jungkook caught the edge of his sleeve, not forcefully, but desperate enough to make Jimin freeze. Don't walk away again, Jungkook breathed. Jimin turned his head just slightly, enough for Jungkook to see the tension in his jaw. Then stop talking around the truth and say what you actually want. Jungkook stepped closer, almost chest to chest now. His breath trembled against Jimin's cheek. I want you, he whispered. Not as a friend. Not as someone I rely on. Not as a maybe someday. I want you, every part of you. And I'm done pretending I don't. Jimin's breath caught. For a moment, the anger melted, replaced by shock, then something deeper, something wounded. You can't just say that, Jimin murmured. Not after everything. Not when I needed those words months ago. I know, Jungkook said. I know I'm late. But I'm here now. And I'm not running. Jimin closed his eyes, inhaling shakily. And what if I don't want you anymore? Jungkook's breath faltered. Do you mean that? Jimin opened his eyes slowly, meeting his gaze. The silence between them pulsed with heat, emotion, and something electric. I don't know what I feel right now, Jimin confessed. I'm angry. I'm hurt. I'm exhausted. Jungkook's voice softened. Then let me carry it with you. You can't fix this with sweet words. I'm not trying to fix it, Jungkook whispered. I'm trying to fight for you. Jimin looked down, his breath trembling. Jungkook stepped even closer, until his body hovered just inches from Jimin's, heat radiating between them. Why are you making this so hard? Jimin whispered, voice cracking. Because losing you would destroy me, Jungkook whispered back. Jimin's eyes snapped up, filled with conflict, love, anger, longing, fear, all swirling at once. And then Jimin whispered, voice barely holding together, if you're lying, if you break me again. Jungkook moved his hand slowly, carefully, placing it over his own heart instead of touching Jimin. I won't survive it either, he breathed. Jimin's resolve faltered. His lips parted, trembling. Jungkook watched him, every muscle in his body taut, waiting, hoping, terrified, and then Jimin said something so soft Jungkook almost didn't hear it. Then show me, Jimin whispered. Don't tell me. Show me. Jungkook's breath caught, the room shrinking around them, heat thick between their bodies, and everything between them shifted, dangerous, emotional, electric, pulling them into a gravity neither of them could escape. The air between them didn't settle after the kiss, it pulsed, charged with something too alive to ignore. Jungkook sat there, chest rising and falling too quickly, lips still tingling, eyes blown wide as if he just stepped off a cliff and survived only because Jimin had jumped with him. Jimin's hand was still on his jaw. He could feel the heat radiating from Jungkook's skin, the trembling beneath it, the storm barely held back. His thumb brushed a faint streak of tears that hadn't yet dried. Are you okay? Jimin whispered. Jungkook exhaled shakily, the breath catching halfway. No. Yes. I don't know. I feel like I can't breathe, but also like I'm finally breathing for the first time. Jimin let out a soft, trembling laugh, relief mixed with something deeper, heavier, but beneath the closeness, something darker flickered behind Jungkook's eyes. A shadow. A memory. A fear that hadn't dissolved with the kiss. Jimin saw it immediately. What are you thinking about? He asked gently. Jungkook hesitated, pressing his back into the couch as though trying to steady himself. Something you said earlier. Something I didn't understand. What part? You said you were pretending too. Jungkook's voice tightened. Pretending what, exactly? The question hung between them like a test, delicate, dangerous. Jimin forced himself to hold Jungkook's gaze even though every instinct screamed to look away. Pretending that the way I felt about you was normal. That it was just Hyungdong-sang stuff. That it didn't get complicated. Jungkook's breath hitched. Complicated how? Jimin swallowed hard. There were moments I couldn't explain. When you touched me, even casually, it felt different. When you smiled at me after a performance, it stayed with me longer than it should have. And when you were hurting and you wouldn't let me in, his voice broke. It devastated me. Jungkook's eyes softened, but they also darkened, shadowed with guilt he couldn't hide. I didn't want to shut you out, he whispered. I was scared that if I opened up, you'd leave. Jimin moved closer until their knees pressed again. I'm still here. I know, Jungkook said. And that scares me too. Jimin's breath stuttered. Why? Jungkook leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together tightly. His voice was quieter now, threaded with something raw. Because now you know what I feel. And it makes everything real in a way that could blow up in our faces. Jimin placed a hand on Jungkook's back, slow and gentle, feeling the tension coil beneath his skin. It won't blow up, Jimin murmured. Not if we're honest. Not if we do this together. Jungkook turned his head slightly, looking at Jimin through lashes still wet from crying. You really want to do this? With me? Even after what I wrote? Jimin leaned in, brushing his forehead against Jungkook's temple. Especially after what you wrote. Jungkook's breath shivered out of him, but suddenly, the door at the end of the hallway slammed. They both froze. Footsteps. Voices. Someone entering the dorm. Jungkook's entire body snapped tense. The panic in his eyes was instant, sharp, overwhelming. Hyung, Jimin grabbed his hand, squeezing. It's okay. It's not, Jungkook whispered harshly. If anyone sees us right now, we're just talking. No, Jungkook said, shaking his head. Not anymore. It's different. We're different. Jimin opened his mouth to reassure him, but Jungkook shot up from the couch so fast Jimin startled. Jungkook ran a hand through his hair, pacing the small space like a trapped animal. Jimin stood slowly. Breathe. Jungkook stopped abruptly. I can't. His chest heaved. I can't think straight. My head is, Hyung, it's too much. Jimin stepped toward him carefully, like approaching something fractured that might break if touched the wrong way. Talk to me. You don't understand, Jungkook insisted, voice low, frantic. What we just did, what we said, it changes everything. And I want it, God, I want it more than anything, but I also know what it means. He turned to Jimin with eyes full of fear. It means if something goes wrong, if one thing falls apart, we lose each other. Jimin felt the words like a knife, not because they were false, but because they were so painfully true. I don't want to lose you, Jungkook whispered. But I don't know how to do this without risking everything. Jimin stepped closer, placing a hand gently on Jungkook's cheek. Jungkook closed his eyes, exhaling shakily at the touch. You don't have to know how, Jimin said softly. We'll figure it out together. Jungkook leaned into the touch, forehead pressing against Jimin's shoulder, his voice muffled and breaking. I'm scared, Hyung. I know, Jimin whispered. But I'm scared too. And that's okay. Jungkook's grip tightened on Jimin's shirt as if grounding himself. The footsteps in the hallway grew closer. Jungkook stiffened again. We can't, he started, pulling back. Jimin grabbed his wrist. Then come with me. Jungkook blinked. What? Not to hide, Jimin said. Just, somewhere we can talk without you feeling like you're going to break apart. Jungkook hesitated, then nodded, almost too quickly. Jimin didn't waste another second. He intertwined their fingers briefly, grounding Jungkook, then let go before opening the balcony door. The rush of cold night air swept in, sharp and cleansing. They stepped outside. The city lights glowed beneath them, a quiet contrast to the storm raging inside Jungkook's chest. He stood at the railing, gripping it tightly, breathing in the cold air like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Jimin stood beside him, not touching, but close enough that Jungkook could feel the warmth radiating from him. After a long moment, Jungkook finally spoke. Hyung, I need you to promise me something. Jimin turned to him fully. Anything. Jungkook's voice cracked as he looked out over the city. If this ever hurts you, if I ever become too much, tell me. Don't stay quiet to protect me. Jimin stepped behind him, hands sliding gently across Jungkook's arms until they rested over his, grounding him against the railing. You're not too much, Jimin whispered. You're just finally letting yourself be real. Jungkook's body trembled. And I can handle real. Jungkook closed his eyes, a tear slipping down his cheek, not from fear, but from the overwhelming relief that came from being seen and not abandoned. Slowly, he turned around, facing Jimin again. He took a shaky breath. There's something else I didn't write in the letter, he said quietly. The part one couldn't bring myself to admit on paper. Jimin's chest tightened. What is it? Jungkook stepped closer, the city lights framing him in soft gold. His voice was barely a whisper. The real reason I was scared of what I felt, Jimin waited, breath held, is because it wasn't just wanting you, Hyung. Jungkook swallowed, eyes locked on Jimin's with trembling vulnerability. It was needing you. Jungkook kept his hand against Jimin's cheek for a long, trembling moment, as if grounding himself in the reality he'd been terrified to touch for months. Jimin's breath came softly, uneven, fragile, but he didn't pull away. Something in him, something bruised and guarded, finally loosened. Come here, Jungkook whispered. Jimin didn't move at first. His chest rose and fell slowly, as if he needed time to gather every fractured piece inside him. Jungkook waited, patient, steady, not pushing, not rushing. Just being there. For the first time, fully, and eventually, Jimin stepped forward, closing the last inch between them. His forehead rested against Jungkook's, his breath warm, trembling with the remnants of anger and affection all tangled together. I hate that you make me feel like this, Jimin murmured. I know, Jungkook answered softly, but I love that you still feel anything at all. Jimin's lips pressed into a thin, pained line before they parted again, releasing a breath that sounded almost like surrender. Slowly, cautiously, he placed his hands against Jungkook's chest, not to push him away, but to feel him. To make sure he was real, Jungkook covered Jimin's hands with his own and gently guided them upward, pressing their palms together over his heartbeat. This has been yours for a long time, Jungkook whispered. I'm just finally brave enough to say it. Jimin's eyes fluttered shut, the weight of his exhaustion melting into something softer, something aching and hopeful. I'm scared, he admitted quietly, voice thin. Loving you has hurt more than anything else. Jungkook leaned in, brushing his lips lightly against Jimin's hair. Not a kiss, not yet, but a promise. Then let me heal what I broke. Jimin trembled, fingers curling into Jungkook's shirt. And if you fail again? I won't, Jungkook whispered, not with certainty, but with a sincerity so raw it felt like an oath carved into his bones. Because I finally understand what I almost lost. Jimin lifted his gaze, meeting Jungkook's eyes directly. No fire, no anger, only a quiet, devastating openness that made Jungkook's breath stop. Then don't lose me again, Jimin said softly. I won't, Jungkook repeated, and this time, he stepped into Jimin's space fully, carefully wrapping his arms around him. No desperation. No force. Just warmth. Just truth. Jimin didn't resist. He let his forehead fall against Jungkook's shoulder, letting out a shaky exhale as if releasing months of bottled-up hurt and longing. Jungkook held him tighter, feeling the moment settle around them like fragile peace after a violent storm. For the first time in a long time, there were no unspoken words, no fear, no running. Just two hearts finally facing the truth they had avoided for far too long. And when Jimin whispered, barely audible, I still love you, Jungkook felt something inside him break open in the gentlest, most overwhelming way. He pulled Jimin closer, burying his face in his hair, voice trembling with relief. I love you too. No hesitation and no fear, no turning away. The storm inside them quieted at last, replaced by the warmth of something real, something broken, repaired, imperfect, but theirs. And as they stood in each other's arms, the night outside softened, the rain easing into a calm drizzle. As if the world itself knew the battle had finally ended, not with dramatic declarations, not with tears or anger, but with two people choosing to stay, fully, honestly, bravely, and for the first time, their story didn't feel like a beginning or an ending. It simply felt right. A love once lost, now found again, held carefully, fiercely, completely, never to be let go.